everybody? Welcome to Live from Coco's Cabinet. Welcome. It's Saturday night. You are here on the show with me, your host, Coco. I am coming to you live here in the cabinet, feeling a bit better, but as you can probably tell from my voice, still pretty under the weather. I've been real sick the last week since last I saw you. It's been kind of a rough 7 days. In fact, our entire show this evening is going to be kind of dedicated to navigating the sort of fever dream delirium state that I was in for those 7 days. So recently, just a few days ago here, live on Blast Radio, I went on. I went online. I went live. I went live for about 11 hours on the radio, and it was sort of just this delirium fever dream. It was called the the not COVID lockdown party, because I had 4 negative tests over 3 days, or it was 3 negative tests over 4 days. That was kind of a running bit on the show where I couldn't remember because it was such a rough week. But anyway, the point being, I ended up not having COVID. Neither did my wife. So it was kind of one of those frustrating situations where you're kind of like, not that you want COVID, but you want something so you could say, okay, well, that's what I've got. So I know how to, you kind of put a face to the evil, the bad guy that you have to fight. Excuse me. In this case, illness, but we had just some kind of mystery, terrible cold illness thing that was very like COVID. So anyway, had the not COVID lockdown party, played music all day, played some weird sound effects that I had downloaded, played some movies on tape. It was kind of a weird time. And while, so I ended up, that was what I guess you could consider the director's cut of the Coco's Not COVID lockdown party. I then went back in and edited that 11 hours down, which it sounds daunting, but it wasn't really that daunting because there were huge blocks of just playing music or movies. So don't think I whittled down this giant piece of marble into some masterpiece. I whittled it down into about an hour of, the choicest bits of my fever dream delirium party. And, excuse me, again, sorry. There's that illness popping up again. And I whittled it down into, kind of just the parts without, copywritten music and stuff. But other, just kind of the weird parts where I was, maybe it's maybe humorous to go back and listen to it, or even really just as a time capsule of a really rough week. So that's sort of the, honestly, I would consider that more the director's cut, if we're using that metaphor, because that's the one where I kind of, I guess the other one was sort of the raw footage, the work print version, or the dailies, if we want to just keep this metaphor really going. So, to segue there, because we were talking movies just then, with my metaphors, tonight's show is all about trying to recap what happened during that week-long fever dream that I just experienced. And what I often do when I'm sick, and I know this isn't unique to me, lots of people do this, but as I'm cocooning, I love to watch movies, and specifically, often I'll watch kind of comfort movies or things that bring me joy. But this particular week, in 7 days, these last 7 days, I watched, along with my wife, she didn't watch all of these with me, but she was a part of some of these, so I'm including her in this. 21 movies, ladies and gentlemen, in 7 days, which is a pretty good amount of movies, honestly. I feel pretty proud of that. It's a weird flex, I guess, but I'm taking it. I'm going to flex So what I thought would be really fun to do for tonight's show is try to do a Fever Dream Delirium wrap up where we go through and I tell you a little bit about all 21 of these movies that I watched, in a way sort of to just try to make sense of what happened these last 7 days. And also just to kind of show you where my mind goes when I'm ill, both the kinds of movies that I watch and also my, I guess the takeaways, my ultimate reviews can often be influenced too by the way I feel. You might really identify with a movie more when you're ill and tired than you might otherwise. But anyway, so that's tonight's show, folks. It's gonna be really fun. It's gonna be kind of a mad dash through 21 movies on the Fever Dream recap. That's right, folks. The Fever Dream recap. I liked it so much I played it twice. So that's what we're going to do here, folks. We're going to go back through this last week where I was very sick and, half delusional, watching movies, all kinds of movies, 21 total movies. And we're going to go through and we're going to talk about all 21 of them. And we are going to start with the movie that I watched Saturday morning, the morning of the show last week, which is when I began to feel not great. So this first movie is called Mackenzie's Island. All right. This is 1998 Mackenzie's Island starring Hulk Hogan and Grace Jones. That's right. Hulk Hogan and Grace Jones. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, I have heard of every Hulk Hogan movie that there is, Coco, and you're telling me there's this Mackenzie's Island? That's right, folks. 1998's Mackenzie's Island, starring Hulk Hogan and Grace Jones. It is, even for a movie like this, when you know what you're getting, when you're going in knowing what to expect, this is particularly awful. It is just an absolutely, it's barely a movie. So this was clearly shot in Florida, right around where Hulk Hogan lives. I imagine that Hulk Hogan probably owns the island where they shot this movie because it's clearly shot on some little tiny island. You just buy an island. He's wealthy enough. And he was probably like sitting out there on the beach one day, like really drunk and just like, oh, hey, brother. Whoa, what if there was a treasure map and there's Mackenzie's Island? And then somebody out there was like, you have so much money. I'm an enabler and I'm going to say, yes, let's do it. And so you end up with this movie, Mackenzie's Island, which barely has a plot that involves Hulk Hogan. He's a retired military dude, as he is in all of these movies from the 90s. Or he's a wrestler, showing his range. And there ends up being, there's like an island on the back of a turtle. Honestly, I don't even want to explain the plot to you because it's going to make it sound more fun and interesting than it actually is. But my review from my Letterboxd page is thus: Grace Jones having a manic episode, because Grace Jones is absolutely, just doesn't seem like she is acting in the same movie as anybody else. And Hulk Hogan is phoning it in this movie. And that's shocking to me because one thing that I've discovered after watching multiple Hulk Hogan movies lately, which we'll come back to that because there's another one in this 21 movie Fever Dream streak. When he tries, he can be at least fairly charming. I'm not talking like he's not out here earning any acting awards or anything crazy like that, but he can at least come across as charming and fun and entertaining. But he didn't even try in this one, and you can really tell. And he is the weakest link in a movie of weak links. And then my favorite highlight is inside of a tent, they decided to have a fight between Hulk Hogan and the former WCW WWE wrestler, the Giant, also known as the Big Show later, Paul White, who's, as you might have guessed, whose gimmick is that he's very huge, he's very tall, he's a gigantic man. And so the filmmakers were like, okay, let's have these two characters fight, but let's put it inside of a tent. This giant man, let's put him into a tent and with Hulk Hogan, and let's have the fight in there. Absolute trash. It was terrible. Do not recommend. Don't hunt it down. It's lost for a reason. It should remain lost, just like Mackenzie's Treasure from the movie. All right, so that was first, 1998's Mackenzie's Island. Up next, I watched a movie that I enjoyed much more. Amityville, 1992, It's About Time, which is the full title of the film. This is one of the later Amityville sequels. In fact, I believe this is part 6, I want to say. I really don't remember. It's not important, to be honest. It was directed by Tony Randall, who genre fans probably know best as the director of Hellbound, Hellraiser 2. And that proves to be important because he brings that same kind of crazy energy to this movie. This movie is awesome. It doesn't require any knowledge of Amityville at all, truly. That's why I said it doesn't matter which entry this is in. It is about a cursed clock, and it gets into weird dream logic and doppelgangers and some crazy body horror, some really amazing practical effects and some effects that play with time. And it's honestly, it's one of those like just snuck under the radar, straight to video kind of things where clearly a lot of love and hard work went into this. And it's absolutely worth your time. I was blown over by it. I purchased this from Danger Zone Video, my often referred to buddies that own a physical media store out in Mount Juliet, Tennessee. I bought this, if you have been listening to the show, you might remember, I purchased this Blu-ray. It's the Vinegar Syndrome remastered Blu-ray at the little pop-up that they did, and I tagged along to the VHS night at No Quarter in Nashville. So I watched it on that Vinegar Syndrome, which is 4K remastered. It's on a standard Blu-ray, not a 4K Blu-ray, but it's a 4K remaster. It's gorgeous, beautiful picture quality. A movie that is way better than it's got any right to be. Amazing. Check it out. Amityville, 1992. It's About Time. Absolutely worth your time. All right, up next, I, along with my wife, watched Crocodile Dundee. That's right, 1986's Crocodile Dundee. This was the first time I had seen Crocodile Dundee. And this actually came about, Hillary and I, my wife, were just browsing through, the endless digital world of movies, just trying to find something. And I scrolled across Crocodile Dundee, and I think I kind of absentmindedly said, I've never seen that. And she said, okay, well, let's watch it. And you know what? We were like, sure, why not? And we start the movie, and Hillary is telling me, she's like, you know what? Actually, I think I know Crocodile Dundee too. I know the movie where he goes to America, because we thought the way the movie begins, we thought that this was a fish out of water story. Yes, but it was the lady traveling to Australia and being, out of sorts there. And that's how the movie starts. So we thought that was the whole movie, but then it turns out the second half of this movie, he goes back to America. So she thought she was remembering the sequel, but she was maybe remembering this one. But then she also thinks, yes, she knows the sequel as well. So that's not the first time this happens, actually, in this Fever Dream 21 movie marathon. So 1986's Crocodile Dundee. I did not really like it that much, to be fully honest. I think Paul Hogan was charming. It was fine. I can see why, people were charmed by it. And I don't know, it didn't really work for me. Some of it was funny. Some of it was really outdated, and kind of uncomfortable. So for me, it was a It was a no thanks. Crocodile Dundee, 1986. All right, up next, I watched the classic 90s movie Mallrats, 1995. Mallrats, of course, directed by Kevin Smith. I had not seen this in a while, and I watched it here in the cabinet on VHS while I was sort of half awake, half conscious, in here laying in a chair with a blanket around me. And I found myself, though, struck by a few things while during this rewatch. First of all, while it does definitely have some dated humor, and it is aggressively 90s, which is very chic right now. It is still really funny. I really did laugh, and yes, some of it is childish, of course, but it's Kevin Smith. But I found it still to be charming and funny, and also I really appreciated more the overall comic booky tone of it. It's got a very clear. I mean, you can see here if you're watching me live on YouTube, I've got the version of the poster that looks like the cover of a comic book. If you haven't seen that cover, to my Blast Radio listeners, it's what it sounds like. It looks like the cover of a comic book with our film stars, situated properly like the cover of a comic book. And the people in the film, they kind of fit the archetypes, and the story follows the kind of comic book archetype. And then, of course, features a cameo by Stan Lee. Before that was a cool thing to do. Kevin Smith ahead of his time there. But I just really, I enjoyed it. I think there are rumors of a sequel to come, and I can only hope that if that happens, that maybe we'll get lucky. We'll get a Clerks 3 rather than a Clerks 2. Well, I'll just put it that way, okay, for my Kevin Smith fans, where I would think Clerks 3, I was expecting, pretty much nothing, and then ended up being what I think is one of his best movies ever. And then Clerks 2, where you're like, okay, I mean, yeah, you made a sequel, but did you really need to? So I don't really know if we're going to get a Clerks 3 with a Mallrats 2, but we'll see. And that sounds like algebra. And that's a nice segue into the next big chunk of what we watched over these last 21 days, The Fever Dream. All right. So the night of that aforementioned VHS night at No Quarter, while I was away broadcasting live at No Quarter in East Nashville, my wife Hillary was here at home, and she watched the Hallmark Channel original movie, The Wedding Veil. All right, that's one thing she did the evening that I was away. So she was telling me about this movie last week sometime, the beginning of our fever dream sickness, because we were both sick together. We do everything together. So she's telling me about the movie, and she's giving me a pretty detailed background of the story. She's telling me it stars Lacey Chabert, all right? And she is close friends with two other girls, played by Autumn Reeser, who always has on a cool, trendy hat, and Allison Sweeney, who Hillary tells me is probably best known for her time on Days of Our Lives. So she's been an actress for a really long time. So anyway, these three ladies they had met in graduate school, and they go on a yearly antiquing trip, right? This is like their thing that they do, and they've remained friends for many years since this tradition started, okay? So during one of these trips, they go antiquing, they go into a store. There is a wedding veil, okay, made out of fine Italian lace, okay? And Avery, who is the Lacey Chabert character, is told the story of the wedding veil, the legend, by the shopkeeper. And the legend of the wedding veil is whoever is in possession of the wedding veil will find their true love. Okay? Now, Avery in the story is a hopeless romantic, and she convinces the other two that they need the wedding veil. They purchase it and agree to split ownership of the wedding veil 3 ways. All right? So Lacey Chabert gets the wedding veil first. She's in possession of it. She falls in love. It's true. She finds true love. She gets married. That's the end, right? That's the finale. The other 2 girls come to the wedding. They're apart, All right. So, and then Hillary tells me that the veil is given to Autumn Reeser, the perpetually hatted Autumn Reeser is the one who is given possession of the veil next. So I am told this story, and I find it compelling, and I say, let's jump in, let's watch the other two movies, and Hillary tells me, well, it's not just the other two. There was the original trilogy. This was last year, but this year there's a new trilogy that just came out. So now it is the Wedding Veil hexology is what we're dealing with here, folks, at this point. That is a 6-film series, a hexology. So if you can believe it, folks, over these last 7 days, included in the 21 films that I viewed, that did include the entire Wedding Veil hexology. Now, except for the first film, because I'll tell you why, folks. The thrilling, engrossing, captivating version of the recap that I was given of The Wedding Veil, starring Lacey Chabert, that I was given by my wife, nothing could compare with that experience. I didn't want to watch the first one and sully that memory. So I did start with the second film of the original trilogy, which was The Wedding Veil Unveiled. That stars Autumn Reeser. Of course, all of these movies, though, yes, what you're seeing here, you have the 3 girls. Each one gets their own movie. Okay, so that's how it works. But each one features all 3 of the girls. But each one, has the one girl is like, it's her movie, so she's like the starring role. It's her part of the story. You got me? So The Wedding Veil Unveiled is Autumn Reeser's turn, okay? And this is the first movie that I watched, all right? Now, the real star of the show here. Now, Autumn Reeser in this movie ends up in Italy, all right? She's a teacher. She ends up teaching out there. And the star of this movie is the real Italian actor, Italian heartthrob, Paolo Bernardini. All right. Now, this gentleman, he is essentially a Hallmark hunk in Italy. All right. He is, and he is crossing over into our American hearts in these Wedding Veil movies. His name is Paolo Bernardini. Now, in my sick delirium, when I'm sick, we're all a little delusional and we're in our fever. So his name ended up becoming kind of a running joke over the last week. And his name, as these things often do, ended up morphing and changing and becoming sort of an exclamation, because this man, this character that he plays in these movies, whose name is also Paolo, is just the kind of the ultimate, the goal, is the man you want to be, the partner you want to be, whoever you are, you try to live up to Paolo Bernardini. So, I'm going to just deliver it in exclamation, because my review for this film is, it was great. I am, I've been on the show and I feel like I kind of defend campy things. I defend what I often lovingly call trash. And there's all kinds of campy trash, and I think Hallmark movies scratch the same itch and appeal to the same part of your brain that wants you to watch, some cheap movie from the 60s where, you can see the wires and stuff. I don't know, like it's the same area. So, I really do enjoy these movies. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm not going to go into a huge defense of Hallmark movies because I don't feel like I need to, because I dig them just as much as anything else, because I think they're fun to watch. So anyway, Wedding Veil Unveiled, the real star of the show is Paolo Bernardini. All right. Italian heartthrob. She's got her hats on. She's in Italy. She has the wedding veil. She meets Paolo Bernardini. They fall in love, and the movie ends just as you would expect. They get married, and everybody comes. Avery comes. The other lady, Allison Sweeney, comes, and everybody, is happy. Okay, but then ownership of the veil changes hands and goes to Allison Sweeney in her first solo movie. This is, her first. This is her Captain America, the first Avenger The Wedding Veil Legacy is Alison Sweeney's star role here. This is her movie in the first trilogy. So in this movie, she meets an Italian chef, and she is a real New York gal, and she makes that point often throughout the film. I could never leave New York. I, love New York as much as I would love if I were married. Is just as important to who I am as blah blah blah. So she meets a kind of a gruff Italian chef. So it turns out this guy is related to the lady who was in this painting, who also featured the wedding veil, which is also the family that made the lace in the wedding veil is Paolo Bernardini's family, and there's all these connections, familial connections. There's like a mystery going on throughout these things, and it's really cool as well. So Alison Sweeney, who, her character is like, no, I don't ever want to be married or fall in love. Well, she's got the veil. She falls in love with the chef. They get married, and she believes in love. And the wedding veil has done it's worked its magic. That's the original trilogy. Okay. Now the new for 2023 trilogy. Everybody's married now, right? So what's cool about this is we're gonna get to see the part of the Hallmark movie that you don't normally get to see, right? We're gonna get to see married life. We get to see what happens after these happily ever after moments, right? So we get a whole trilogy of that. We get 3 different perspectives of what Hallmark married life looks like, okay? So the first one, The Wedding Veil Expectations, all right? And you can probably tell from that title what our big subject is going to be in this trilogy. If our last subject was getting married, the children, babies, are definitely the focus in the 2023 trilogy. So kicking things off is Avery's story. Lacey Chabert is back, and she has a baby. She's got a baby. She's had a baby with her new husband, and they've bought a house. Okay, and they are in this house, and it's so beautiful. It's like the most beautiful house you've ever seen, but it is busted. It's like Money Pit busted. All right, the Tom Hanks classic movie. Everything keeps going wrong. There's cracks in the foundation. They've got this fun, charming, helpful contractor that kind of lives there pretty much as they're doing these repairs. So, but the cool thing about this, there's a couple cool things about Wedding Veil Expectations. I think it actually shows kind of an attempt at the realistic struggles that might come with, having a baby and being split between your career and all these things. But it also, just from a technical perspective, the director of photography in this movie was either feeling ambitious, or maybe this was somebody's like senior project or something, because there were actually some really lovely shots, beautiful cinematography, well composed, really cool. A lot of neat lighting, using sunsets and stuff. Like I said before, the house where they live is kind of impossibly beautiful, and is shot really well, and that was cool. So, she has her struggles with her baby, because she can't get pregnant. She's struggling to get pregnant, but then they do, and I don't know. It's cheesy, it's schmaltzy, but it's fun again, and it kind of works. So once again, you've got Autumn Reeser and Alison Sweeney kind of come in whenever they're needed, because they just kind of fly in whenever they're like, all these people are impossibly rich as well, which is also fun to watch, because they just fly in from their various wherever they live to help whenever people get stressed out. Like they would call and like, oh, you sounded funny on the phone. I'm going to come from Rome to check on you in New York. But anyway, Wedding Veil Expectations, first of the new trilogy. Lacey Chabert, enjoyed it. It was pretty good. Up next, we're back with our favorite people, Autumn Reeser and Paolo Bernardini. And he is back, and he is charming as ever. Love knows no distance, as the poster tells us. And this one was a lot of fun as well. I think it showed kind of so Autumn Reeser is a teacher, and she was having kind of a really, really bad week. And I'll tell you what, leading up to getting sick, I had one of the worst weeks as a teacher that I've ever had, and I'll be transparent and say that here. It was a bad week, and then I got really sick right after that, and I think it was just sort of a straw that broke the camel's back situation. But there's a unique kind of exhaustion and feeling of being overwhelmed that comes with being a teacher, and as as hallmarky as it was, I think that they kind of captured that Autumn Reeser was feeling that. She was also feeling this pressure to take this position more out of obligation than it being what she really wanted to do. And I don't know, it was kind of a realistic struggle. And then our good buddy Paolo was kind of in a situation where he was feeling like he needed to go back home. And of course, everything works out perfectly in the end because it's Hallmark. But Paolo Bernardini is amazing. Once again, Autumn Reeser had all kinds of hats in this one. All the hats were amazing. And then the movie ends. She's pregnant because babies and children are the theme of this new trilogy. All right, so that was Wedding Veil Inspiration. And then to close out the new trilogy, the Wedding Veil Hexology, is the Wedding Veil Journey. This is Alison Sweeney's last movie. So the two of them, they got married, right? The gruff Italian chef. But they didn't get to go on their honeymoon. And so this movie is their honeymoon. They finally get to go. They go to Greece. And while they're on their honeymoon, they meet an adorable Greek boy named Leo. And Leo just charms the pants off everybody. And he's part of a school, which ends up, of course, being a school for orphans. And Alison Sweeney, just like she never wanted to get married, she never wanted children, but by the end of this movie wants to help this child and adopt this child. The child, of course, is a gifted artist and is accepted into a program that comes right down the street from their New York home. They adopt the child. They take him home. They have a child now, a little Greek boy named Leo. This one was pretty good. I enjoyed the exotic setting. I think the main reason that I ended up disappointed with this one is at some point in the Fever Dream Delirium, I misread the synopsis for this one, and I thought that they were going to be like trapped on a desert island. I thought I was getting like a Gilligan's Island situation, but I ended up getting, like we found our adopted son situation. So it was just kind of a different experience than I was ready for. So that ended the Wedding Veil Hexology. 6 movies centered around a magical wedding veil. And it was a journey that I really enjoyed. I'll be completely honest. So I want to thank my wife for giving me such an exciting summary of the first movie that really inspired us to continue through the rest of the films. So, all right, up next, we're working our way through all 21 movies that I watched during my Fever Dream Delirium. We have 1989's Tango and Cash, which I had also never seen. Kurt Russell, Sylvester Stallone. This was a lot of fun. I kind of got sucked into it based on the fact that Kurt Russell was in it. And I almost always will watch whatever he's in. And guys, this is like peak Kurt Russell. The hair is just the ultimate. I mean, I often say that the hair, and I'm talking hair here, not necessarily like movie quality. The hair in Big Trouble in Little China is great as well, but I do feel like maybe the hair in this is even just a little bit better. It's a little longer, a little bit fuller, better, a little taller, So anyway, there's a lot of really dated humor in this. Yes. But once it gets going, Kurt Russell and Stallone have good chemistry. They're really fun with each other. It definitely follows the buddy cop mold, but it also is like at a time where that was still a mold that was, not maybe even called a mold yet. It was still movies where like this were still just coming out, and this was all being kind of figured out. So, lots of shirtless Kurt Russell as well, which I think honestly makes up for most of the shortcomings of the film. But truly a really cool set design. a lot of really neat staging and a lot of cool stunt work. I really enjoyed it. It was a fun first time watch. And so we did, I watched Tango and Cash, and Hillary watched, I think she watched most of that as well. And we went from tango to another kind of dance, the forbidden dance, the lambada. All right. Now, I'd never heard of this movie, and this got brought up because we had seen a couple of different references to the lambada being the forbidden dance on some other programs that we were watching. If you'll excuse me for just a moment, I'm taking a sip of water. So she asked me, are you familiar with this reference that's being made? And I was like, not really. I mean, a reference to a dance is what I thought. But she says, well, there's this movie, The Lambada, the Forbidden Dance. So we find it and we watch this clip first. It's not a trailer, but this clip that we see is the actress Laura Herring, who I know best from Mulholland Drive. She acts opposite Naomi Watts in Mulholland Drive. So if you've ever seen Mulholland Drive, you know who Laura Herring is. She's the brunette. All right. She's much younger. Okay. This is 1990. But in this clip, which again, this is what we watched before we watched the trailer, she is dancing for Richard Lynch, the legendary screen villain who you know, I guarantee you. But we just saw today in Invasion USA. I saw a little bit of that movie today. He's in that. He's in Puppet Master 3. He's in Trancers 2. I'm not giving you really obvious examples of movies he's in, but classic villain, really memorable face. So in this clip that we watch, she's having to awkwardly dance for Richard Lynch. And I was just sold. I was like, this looks weird and campy and strange. Let's watch it. So we watched the movie, and it turns out it's a Canon film released by the Canon Group. And I'm currently reading a book about that Canon film guide. That was just sort of a weird coincidence. If you're familiar with Canon, they did lots of action movies with Chuck Norris, the Masters of the Universe movie, lots of wonderful stuff in the 90s and the 80s. So anyway, Laura Herring plays a princess from the rainforest, okay? And her village is being destroyed by industrial development, all right? So she goes to America to plead with the company who is destroying her home in the rainforest, and Richard Lynch is the head of this company. She brings with her the village witch doctor, which is played by Sid Haig of House of a Thousand Corpses fame, Devil's Rejects fame, Captain Spaulding, the clown, but also famous for, blaxploitation movies from the 70s and lots of films from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Sid Haig, legend. He plays a mute witch doctor who is literally magical and does some magical stuff in this movie, and it's wild. Richard Lynch wears a cowboy hat for most of the movie. He's the villain. The movie has a kind of a really aggressive, really rule-following political message of, we got to save the rainforest, we got to recycle, make sure you use protection, all kinds of fun stuff. And it is wild, and it was a really fun time. The dance moves were amazing. Laura Herring's an incredible dancer, and the choreographed dance scenes were really incredible. And you even get to see Richard Lynch and his creaky pelvis doing the lambada. So if you've never seen it, check it out. It was great. I really enjoyed it. All right, let's keep moving. Up next, I watched the director's cut of the movie from 1997, Spawn, on VHS. This was from 1997. I had never seen the director's cut, as far as I know, so I thought, I'll check this out. I saw no difference, no noticeable difference, and the movie is still terrible. So nothing new to report there. Soundtrack's still great, but the movie is still terrible, just like you remembered. So not really worth revisiting. So let's move on. Up next, we watched Megan, finally, 2023's new Megan, and it was really fun. We both really enjoyed it. I think it was it's designed as a crowd pleaser, PG-13, to get it to as many audience members as possible, and I think it succeeds at that. There's a lot of stuff in there that horror hounds are going to enjoy, but also I think lots of casual horror fans are going to enjoy it just as much as the next person. It's very entertaining, very funny. Had some nice commentary on parenting, kind of the modern, what it's like to parent, in the modern world. And we liked it. We enjoyed it. Good movie. All right. Next, we watched, I watched this one. Hillary watched some parts of this one. Hell Comes to Frogtown. That's right, folks. That's a real movie that exists. Released in 1988, starring Roddy Piper and some amazing frog costumes. This movie is one that, that another one theme that I kind of kept going throughout my fever dream here of these 21 movies that I watched. Just some things were just like, I know what this movie is. I've heard of this movie, but I've never sat here and watched it. Let's watch it. So that was the case here with Hell Comes to Frogtown. I knew about this movie, had never watched it, and I watched it, and it's funny. It's definitely dated, but it was very entertaining. It really falls apart at the end for me, but fun production design. Definitely a B movie, but it was a good time. Had fun with it. Enjoyed it. Up next, though, I watched 1993's Mr. Nanny, once again starring Hulk Hogan. And so I've been kind of revisiting the films of Hulk Hogan over the last several weeks. And I've noticed, as I mentioned before, that when he puts in effort, he can be, in his way, charming. He can be charming and entertaining. And this Mr. Nanny is an example where it really works. I think this and Suburban Commando, honestly, are maybe the two best examples of when it really, really works and is actually really a fun movie, period, start to finish. And this one in particular, just because it is, in addition to being silly, it is just really bizarre. And that really kind of is personified in the comic book villain role that David Johansen, he of the New York Dolls, and I know him from Scrooged as well, notably, but also he's Buster Poindexter, which you may know him as well. Anyway, he plays a villain named Tommy Thanatos, who he has a lead skull, like a true comic book, like the top of his skull is just metal, and he uses it to headbutt people, but also loud noises mess with him. It's all very cartoonish and comic booky and over the top, but it's really, really fun. And I think, kind of like I said, this, and for me, Suburban Commando also works on that level as well, is when Hulk Hogan movies kind of work the best. So this was a really fun revisit. I did enjoy rewatching Mr. Nanny. Up next, which might be another surprising first-time watch for me, was Lethal Weapon from 1987. I'm a big fan of Shane Black, who wrote Lethal Weapon. I love Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, Nice Guys. I think Iron Man 3 is solid. And I knew that he wrote Lethal Weapon. This movie, I know that he wrote Last Boy Scout as well, which is another movie that I'm told, hey, check that one out. And so I thought, well, let's watch Lethal Weapon, because this was another one where Hillary was like, oh yeah, I know Lethal Weapon. We should totally watch that. So I watched this one with Hillary, and it was really, really great. It was very Shane Black. It's kind of, you can really see it's, Christmas adjacent. There are people jumping out of windows, off ledges. There's a connection to pornography, the porn business. It's Hollywood. All this stuff. There's shootouts on the freeway, all these things that are just he has in almost all of his movies. It's so interesting to kind of see, even, way back when, again, it's fun to always see the origins of stuff like this. So it's a classic for a reason. It's excellent. It's exciting. It's very sharp. It is, you can kind of see why it was kind of laid the mold for this kind of buddy cop movie. Um, and I really enjoyed it. It was a great first watch, and like I said, it's classic for a reason. So we're getting into the home stretch here, folks, of the 21 movies watched during my fever dream delirium. And up next was another really fun one. This was 1989's Cyborg, and this was one that we did end up watching together, Hillary and I. Directed by the only recently late Albert Pune, who did a lot of really great. I talked a little bit about this on my fever dream delirium, or excuse me, the not COVID lockdown party when I was deep in the throes of the fever, about how Albert Pune was sort of an unsung hero of what is referred to as the B movie or even C movie. He made a lot of really terrific movies and always had a really sharp eye and was a great director and did some great work for Full Moon and for Canon and New World Pictures, and truly was a loss to the community of folks who knew his work. So this, I think, is another example of why he was kind of an unsung hero. This movie has some really incredible production design. It's a fully realized world. If you're not familiar with the story, it's about a post-apocalyptic world where there are pirates and everybody's got these post-apocalyptic costumes, and there's a virus, and there obviously are cyborgs, as you probably guessed from the title. But this world that they've created, they found some amazing locations, and the way that it's shot, it's all just, you don't feel like you're in a cheap movie. You get lost in the world. Some really well put together shots. There are flaws and faults, and it's a little over the top in a lot of spots, of course, but just a delight. Really loved it, and just kind of a reminder that Albert Pune's loss was a bad one, and it really hurt. Hey, you know what? I just saw for the first time. I've got a comment on my YouTube chat, and I'm going to reply. Thank you, Kenneth. Getting there. He said, "Hope you're feeling better," and I am. I've turned the corner and I'm getting there. So still a little congested, but turned the corner. Thank you. How exciting. It's fun to have a live audience. All right. So up next, we kind of kept the train going with Lethal Weapon 2. This one was very decidedly not written by Shane Black. It was a story by credit for Shane Black. And for me, you could really tell that, and I mean that in a negative way. This movie felt like kind of a collection of incidents, that they had kind of pinned onto Post-its onto the story wall, that they were like, yeah, this will be fun. And then it doesn't really go anywhere beyond that. There's like some South African stuff going on. But what's interesting here is this was another situation where when Hillary was kind of not sure if she was remembering the first or the second Crocodile Dundee, she was like, no, this is the good one. This was got Joe Pesci and Rene Russo, and it does have Joe Pesci, but not Rene Russo, which is part 3. So, neither one of us really enjoyed this one. To be honest, I do still want to keep it going and watch part 3. But Lethal Weapon 2 did not hold the same magic as the first one for me. And for my YouTube audience there, you just saw my cat Bella walk by because she wants to leave the room, I believe. All right, up next, we watched the excellent 1984 Michael Crichton movie Runaway. This is written and directed by Michael Crichton, and starring Tom Selleck and Vicky Rhodes and Cynthia Rhodes, excuse me, not Vicky Rhodes, and Kirstie Alley in a notable part as well. And this is set in a future where robots have taken over nearly every job that you could take over, and they malfunction often enough that there is a section of the police called the Runaway section where they deal with these broken robots that are malfunctioning, and it's their job to go fix them. So that's what Tom Selleck, that's his job. He has a son. He saves these, he gets in these situations where he has to save people from malfunctioning robots, but then he gets involved in this big plot, as you do. But then Gene Simmons from Kiss is the villain, and he's crazy. And there are these robots that look like spiders that are these assassin droids that explode and spray you with venom. It's awesome. It's a great movie. I think I explained the plot really badly. It also uses the fear of heights really well. Tom Selleck's character is afraid of heights, and he has to climb to the top of this construction thing, and it's terrifying. It's great. Really, really cool. Great movie. Runaway, directed and written by Michael Crichton. We are getting close to the end. Only 2 movies left. Up next, we watched George Miller's 3,000 Years of Longing, which I was, looking forward to. I'm a fan of George Miller. The trailer looked cool. Visually, it was beautiful. It was beautiful to watch. But kind of the heart of the narrative is this love story, which I won't spoil anything beyond that. But you could probably tell from the title that a love story would be important. And the love story that is sort of the central love story of the film just didn't work for me. It didn't hit, as it were. And because that is sort of the most sort of critical, quintessential element of the film in terms of its emotional weight, its narrative weight, the film itself just didn't really work for me because of that. So definitely enjoyed looking at it, but it didn't feel too much from watching it. 3,000 Years of Longing. All right, and then finally, last night, it's the last one, 21 movies in 1 week. We watched the latest Amazon Prime original, Shotgun Wedding, starring Jennifer Lopez and Josh Duhamel, also featuring Jennifer Coolidge, the always delightful Jennifer Coolidge. So honestly, as is the case with most Prime originals, at least as we have found, not that great. It was occasionally entertaining. There were, a few laughs to be had. It took a good while to even get to the point where I was like, well, let's keep watching it or not. There was a point where it lost me at the beginning because it wasn't very interesting. It picks up speed in the middle. It's just not that great, and it's just sort of been, like I said before, just the Amazon just doesn't really do it for me. I have not had good luck with Amazon's original programming. So that was definitely the case here with Shotgun Wedding. So that was the last of the 21 movies that I watched, along with my wife. And we made it, guys. That was the Fever Dream wrap-up. Whew, man, that's pretty exhausting. I don't know about you, but that was pretty exhausting. So if you enjoyed that, if you like that sort of thing, this is exactly what the wonderful social media platform Letterboxd is great for. You can track what your friends are watching and what they rate them, and if they write a little review for them. So if you liked this, if you liked hearing what I watched and what I thought about what I watched, follow me on Letterboxd at Coco's Cabinet. I will put the link for that in the show notes for this on the various places where it is streaming here live on Blast Radio, YouTube, and later to be broadcast on your phone via your favorite podcast provider. So that took quite a bit of time. So I'm going to say that our show has reached the end. And I'm also feeling still under the weather, and this took, a pretty good amount of energy. So that was the Fever Dream recap. Those were the 21 movies that I watched while I was sick, and I'm still recovering. Again, if you enjoyed that recap at Coco's Cabinet on Letterboxd, you can follow along with me when I watch films and see what I rate them. Also, follow me on Instagram at Coco's Cabinet of Curiosities, on Twitter at Coco's Cabinet, and on YouTube at Coco's Cabinet. I hope all of you have a wonderful Saturday evening. Thank you for joining me for a big chunk of it. Thanks again to Kenneth for checking in on me there on YouTube. Um, and I hope everybody has a wonderful evening. And we'll see you again next week on Live from Coco's